Hey guys, this is Adrian from Real RC Reviews, and today we're taking a look at the Tactic TTX660. It is the latest iteration of their 6-channel air transmitter. A couple years ago I reviewed the 650, which kind of took me by surprise. I didn't expect something that inexpensive to have so many features and to be, basically a full-featured transmitter for a lot cheaper than the competition out there. Actually, I wouldn't even call it the competition because Tactic kind of stands alone. The only thing that compares in price to Tactic is stuff from maybe, what is it, FR Sky and Fly Sky, and I personally don't put a whole bunch of trust in those companies just because they're not US based, and I don't know how easy it is to get hold of their customer service or whatever. Spectrum, Futaba, Tactic, I'm comfortable with because I can call somebody, I can call a US store or a manufacturer and get any issue that I might have taken care of. Since I reviewed my 650, I have seen a lot more Tactic transmitters showing up at the field. I think the big part is because, again, the Tactic transmitters are a lot less expensive than the other big brands out there, and receivers are like a 6-channel receiver for this transmitter is $20. A 6-channel receiver for Spectrum or Futaba, you're looking at $40, and that's a basic transmitter. There are knockoffs of the other brands, but number one, don't trust the knockoffs, and number two, don't buy them because you're actually hurting the companies, like Futaba and Spectrum and Tactic. Tactic, I haven't seen clones out there, but just, stay away from clones. I know there's a lot of other review channels that review clones and stuff, and I just think that's not good for the industry and not good for the hobby, and actually not good for us because then, we're gypping our own US-based companies. That aside, these Tactic transmitters are pretty sweet. This new one has more switches, a new knob, some sliders in the back, and it's starting to feel a lot more like it's like something that you'd get from Futaba. It's really solid. It doesn't feel light. It is plastic. Got a little textured action back here, but it's comfortable. You got a nice carrying handle here. I was hoping maybe they would do away with this type of antenna and just do something solid. However, this does help with storing, putting it in a case or that kind of thing. One of my favorite things about this transmitter is how easy it is to program. Let's do a walkthrough. I'll walk you through programming an airplane. So I'm just going to go ahead and assume that you already have the binding done and are going to your programming mode. So to get to programming, you click the enter, and from there you have a menu of your Servo Setup. I'll go through each one. Dual rate and Expo, channel 5 and 6 set. Those are going to be your flaps or landing gear. And for that matter, with a 6-channel transmitter and receiver, you can do flaps. What you'll have to do, and what I prefer to do when I'm doing flaps, is have my ailerons into a Y harness and just have them on one channel, but separate the flaps so you can adjust each one individually, so you don't end up having to, so you don't get any roll when you're using your flaps if they're not perfectly even. Throttle curve, I've never been one to really mess with that, but it's your throttle curve. Throttle cut is something that you'll want to do for your safety. Aileron mixer, that's, you want to mix aileron with any other surface. Same thing with rudder mixer. These are all things that if you want to, do your own mixes. Say for instance, you want to mix aileron and rudder, you'd go into one of those. RF output, of course, is your, whether you're transmitting or not. You can do a range test there, or you can turn off your transmitter output if you want to work on it, or something like that. And timer is also something that you should always use. Once you've gotten the hang of how long your batteries last, you definitely want to set a timer so you're not going over, you're not going into low voltage cutoff and potentially crashing your plane. So, Servo Set. This would be the first thing you do, and this is where on this screen where you would, if any of your channels were reversed, you would click in there and reverse it or keep it normal. Sometimes with Futaba and Tactic you do have to reverse the throttle, so be cautious of that. It all depends on the ESC you're using. Also in Servo Set is a sub trim. You can fine tune your trims in here without using these. I like doing that when I'm just off by a little bit, although I would recommend you manually trimming your aircraft as best you can, and then sub trim to do the fine tuning. What else do we have here? We have travel. With some airplanes you don't want too much travel, so you would lower that here. Go into each channel and you can lower it individually. And that's it for that menu. So I'm assuming in this imaginary plane I'm programming that everything is good. I do not have to reverse anything. So hit escape, get out of there. Dual rate, oops. Dual rate and Expo. This is important because an airplane, especially like a sport plane, on full throws with no Expo is going to be touchy as the heck. Even my kind of chill flyers like my Fun Cub and my Timber and stuff like that, even with those on full rates, I like to jack up Expo, even though on high rates I do have my rates all at 100. So here you would assuming we're on ailerons, we want to do our aileron dual rates. So you're there on aileron. Let's keep it at 100 because that's your full throw. And here is Expo, and that will soften the stick around the middle, so it's not so touchy. Without Expo, any slight movement of your aileron will be a bigger move, more sensitive. So this makes it less sensitive. In Futaba and Tactic, you want to go negative for Expo. Spectrum's always positive. So I like to, on high rates, I like to have, oops, I like to really jack it up to about 50. Then from here you decide which switch you want to use. I always use the switch up here. So it's telling you to choose your switch. I'm choosing this one. Enter, escape. Now it's on this SD switch, which was really easy. So from there, you would program your second rate. So for my second rate, I don't want as much throw in case it's really crazy on full rates. And then I also, since I'm putting less throw, I don't have to do as much Expo, so I like to do maybe about 30. So then you would do the same thing. Oops. You would do the same thing for elevator, rudder, and you know, I'm not going to go through all of those, but you would do the exact same thing and just pick a different switch, or if you're like me, kind of lazy when it comes to programming, and I'm not competing or doing anything like that, so I would just I personally put them on all on the same switch, and I generally fly on high rates anyway. So moving on, the next menu here is channels 5 and 6. Like I said, that's for flaps or retracts. Again, you choose which switch when you're down here, and offset and travel, and you know, you have to actually have something plugged in to actually see what it's doing. I can't do an imaginary setup here because, you know, retracts and flaps are going to be different on every plane. Again, throttle curve I don't use. I think that's more for guys that are doing competition and stuff. Throttle cut is important. It's a good way of knowing that your airplane is not armed. So let's go ahead and program that. It's asking for control here, so I'd like this stick, this top shoulder stick, to be my throttle cut. So now it's set there. You know, sometimes you actually have to set these numbers as to, you know, what you want it to cut to. I cut it all the way down to 0. That way, once you have that switch activated, if you hit your throttle stick, you're not going to fire up your motor, which will save your fingers or your clothing or your face or whatever happens to be close to the prop. In my imaginary airplane, there are no aileron mixes or rudder mixes. And then here's your timer. Set it for 5 minutes. And I like to have my timer activate with my throttle. So I'm going to tell it to kick in on my timer when it's, what, about 10% throttle. So now once I'm over to that 10% throttle, it starts. If I go below that, it stops. That's awesome, and you don't waste, you have a pretty accurate sense of your timer, because if you're flying, for instance, you know, some kind of glider, you might kill your throttle, and you know, it's good to know that you're not just timing no use of the throttle. So so that way, you know, if you're just catching thermals, this thing's not going to go off after 5 minutes and tell you to come down, when you know well that it's, you know, your battery's not depleted since you haven't been using your throttle. So that's basically it. That's basically how you would go about programming an airplane in this thing. I'm generally a kind of guy that likes to use, you know, read manuals. And when I first got my 650, I wanted to see if I could set, like, to me that's the big selling point. If I can set something up without reading a manual, then, you know, you're really getting at how user-friendly it is. So this definitely fits the bill in that. Of course, since then I've read through it just to make sure I was doing things correctly, and also don't use my video as a, you know, as the Bible of how to program this stuff. I didn't go into enough details, but I'm sure there are plenty of other videos out there. I just wanted to show you how if you just got a plane today and you wanted to fly in 20 minutes or less, you could go through the initial setup of just getting your plane ready to go and in the air. So, you know, I liked the 650. I like this one. It feels nicer. It looks nicer. There's more stuff going on. There's more customizations. I'm really glad I got it. It just gives you a way of flying on the cheap without sacrificing quality. It's backed by, of course, Tower Hobbies and Hobbyco, which is huge. You know, if you were to have an issue, which I've never had an issue, and none of my friends who have had Tactic transmitters have ever had an issue with them, but if one were to arise, you know, you have one of the biggest names in RC, you know, backing this product up. I'm hoping that these guys do a surface transmitter that has the screen and everything, because, you know, when you have as many cars, trucks, and airplanes and everything as you know, someone like me does, it really starts to get expensive. So, you know, Tactic you can depend on to beat everyone out in terms of budget priced, wallet friendly products out there. Even their servos are getting better. There's a lot of things that I'm just really happy that Tactic is doing. So if you're new to the hobby and everybody's telling you gotta buy Futaba, you gotta buy Spectrum, you know, it really depends on your wallet. Futaba is a phenomenal radio. I have one also. I have a 14SG, but you know, they cost close to $500, if not somewhere over that. This currently retails for $140, and I think with Tower's coupon codes you get $10 off right now. So, you know, if you're new and if you're new, you definitely want to buy a nice radio. You want to buy something that you can, you know, if you get proficient at all with airplanes, you don't want to be limited by some screenless 4-channel transmitter. You want to start off with something that you can actually use with flaps or retracts or something like that, and you want something that is really easy to program. So, you know, if you don't want to spend on something as high end as Futaba, just know that you can buy a Tactic transmitter and not have that worry that you're buying some, you know, piece of junk from some Chinese retailer. They're really good and they're really solid. Don't let the price fool you. I went into my first 650, you know, kind of with a snobby attitude. But, you know, I took it to the field. I flew some of my airplanes with them. And you know what? Transmission never went out. I never lost contact. It worked just as well as my other high-end radios. So don't listen to people that tell you that you need Futaba or you need another high-end, you know, just starting out. Those are great to move into when you're getting into bigger, you know, huge airplanes with, you know, tons of servos, and you need to customize setups. Not that you can't do some of that with this, but you know, when you have 2 servos per aileron and a servo for each flap, and your elevator is also, you know, split up on 2 servos, you know, that's when you want something that has 14 channels or 16 channels or something like that. But, you know, for your first at least couple years of flying, this thing will be, you know, definitely sufficient to get you going and to keep you going, especially with those $20 receivers. So I hope I didn't bore you. I know my my voice gets a little bit robotic, especially when I'm trying to explain something, but also don't let that fool you. I truly do like this. It is a solid product, again, backed by a solid company, and I would recommend the Tactic line of transmitters any day of the week. So with that in mind, If you have any questions, put them in the comments or send me an email, admin@realrcreviews.com. I'd be happy to help you out, and if I can't help you right off the bat, I can, research and try to get your answer for you. But with that said, I will sign out, and I will catch you on the next review. Take it easy.